To the Grubhub, DoorDash, or any other food delivery employees, what is the strangest scenario you have had with an order? I worked for a delivery company about 6 years ago. I got an order for a single cigar. Total cost of goods about $3. Delivery fee $14. He lived way the hell out in the boonies. He also tipped my like $10. Turns out he was drunk and delivery fee is less than a duet. Story 2. The delivery instructions were to beat on the door like you're the cops and then roar like a T-Rex to scare my kids. I did this, but a small, extremely confused lady answered the door. Apparently, the husband had written those instructions for a prior delivery and had not realized delivery instructions copy over to the next delivery if not deleted. Story 3. I got one. That one time I followed a weird middle-aged guy into his basement for a life-affirming surprise. Delivering pizzas. My attitude is that nothing can really go that wrong, so long as I drive carefully, avoid muggings, and never enter a customer's home. When I was younger and hadn't yet adopted that last rule, I delivered a proper stack of pizzas to a really nice house in a very wealthy neighborhood where I was greeted by a classic mid-50s suburbanite guy. I had like 50 pounds of pizzas, and he was just vibrating with excitement like a little kid asking me if I wanted to see something amazing in his basement where the pizzas were going anyway. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of red flag, but from his vibe and the amount of pizza he'd ordered, I figured he was having some kind of game night with his buddies and was eager to show off his layout, entertainment system, bar, etc. Wealthy guys love showing the sweet toys they worked for to broke younger folks, and when you're working for tips, sometimes an ooh or an ah at a car or in-home luxury you don't care about is worth an extra $10. So I followed him into his huge house, preparing myself to express amazement at his whatever. We get down to the basement and it was a puppy party. A true and actual puppy party, some sort of adoption event he'd set up for his kids' B-Day. Exactly as I'd expected, there was a classic rich guy basement with a full bar and pool table and wall-sized entertainment center and huge sectional couch and recliners. What I didn't expect was a gaggle of 8th grade girls playing with dozens of puppies being supervised by handlers. Every kind of puppy I could imagine. I set the pizzas down on the bar and just sat on the floor and squealed and giggled while puppies tried to eat the smell of pizza off of me, succeeding only in devouring my heart through my face. After a few minutes, I stood up all teary-eyed and flushed with happiness, and the guy just grinned his understanding at me, gave me an envelope of cash, and sent me on my way. The hit of oxytocin and serotonin from those puppies still warms me years later. Damn puppy party, man. My life is fuller knowing that can even happen. Story 4? My wife and I have done Uber Eats, Dr. Dash, and Instacart for about 2 years now. We don't have too many stories, mostly just high, drunk, or naked people answering the door. My wife is in a few Facebook groups, though, and we just heard about a woman who was delivering some food into a private gated home. The gate had to be manually opened by the homeowner, and he let her in no problem. But then after she delivered the food, he wouldn't let her leave. It took calling the police, them arriving, and filing a report for her to be able to leave and learn that this was the 3rd time he's done this. Uber, though, won't ban him from their service. Story 5. My boyfriend and I used to do grocery delivery. One time I had a woman order 33 oranges. Another time, he had someone order 24 jars of vanilla frosting. The store didn't even have enough vanilla frosting in stock to complete the order. Then 1 week later, we saw that the same man placed another order for 20 more jars of vanilla frosting. Story 6. Drop-off instructions said, text me when you arrive and come to the side of the house. I broke my leg and I can't come downstairs, but I'll lower a backpack down to you on a rope. Your tip is in the loop on the back, thanks. I thought it was a setup, but turned out to be legit. I thought it was amusing. Story 7. Used to deliver pizza. I was 18. Brought a huge order to a house on a weekday evening where clearly a bunch of middle-aged friends were having a huge party. The door opened, a 40-something guy answered and yelled over his shoulder, "The pizza's here!" Everyone was clearly trashed already. It's around 7 p.m. He gives me a 1-second sign and goes back in the house. I hear him telling everyone to give up cash to pitch in for the order. Another 40-something wasted lady comes busting out past me, goes to the passenger side of a truck, then just lies the top part of her body down inside the truck on the seat. And I think falls asleep for a few minutes. I'm on the doorstep holding 10 pizzas. Door wide open. Rowdy 50-year-old's party is hopping. And the lady who has my money is asleep with her front half in the truck. I'm about to yell for someone else to help me when she gets up, then stumbles over to me. Conversation goes something like this. Wasted lady, how much is it? Me, $108. Wasted lady, staring at a wad of bills in her hands. She then shoves them all at me. You count that. I count it. Me, you gave me $164. Wasted lady, is that too much? Me, well, I don't think so, but your bill is only $108. Wasted lady, well, you count that. Me, ma'am, it's $164. She stares at me a second, looks at the pizza, looks at the money, reaches into her pocket, pulls out another $10 and slaps it on top of the pile of money. Wasted lady, and there's your tip! I unloaded the pizzas and took off as fast as I could. Best tip I've ever made in my life. Story 8. I drive for Uber Eats, and one time someone ordered a healthy food, vegan place, and I saw that the order was 8 small bags of chips. Not even anything off their menu, just 8 bags of chips. Then while I was on my way to deliver it, they messaged me twice in the app. The first time they said, please, and the second message was, be careful. To this day, I have no idea what was going on or why they didn't go buy chips from the convenience store near their house. Story 9. Many years ago, I was a driver for Pizza Hut. We had someone place an order. Their home address was saved to our system, but in the notes, it said to deliver it to a hotel literally down the road from said home address. So I go to the hotel, knock on the door, and a dude answers in his boxers with a girl in bed peeking around to see who was at the door. 99 Precinct. Sure, I walked into an affair encounter. Story 10. One time during the early days of the pandemic, I got an order for like a ton of BBQ ribs from some newly opened restaurant in Atlanta. I got all this food, drove out to some random upscale Hilton hotel off the beaten path. After a ton of back and forth with the concierge, he finally directed me to the correct room. I finally reach it only to be met at the door by 2 naked folks and another 2 more waiting on the bed in the hotel room. I'm not saying those BBQ ribs were going to be used in that group sex I interrupted, but I can't definitively say there wasn't a connection. Story 11. I used to deliver pizzas, and one time I arrived at a house at the same time as a driver from another pizza place. We looked at each other confused for a sec before we went to the door. Turns out they had some people over, and one of the people there really liked one restaurant over the other, so much so that they ordered a separate pizza. Story 12. I pick up 2 Filet-O-Fishes from McDonald's and drive them to the address, listed as the customer's residence. The address is for an entire mobile home park. I text the customer through the Postmates app to see if I can get more specific instructions. No answer. I call. No answer. I text again. No answer. I call again, and a woman picks up. She sounds about 60 or 70. She attempts to give me directions about how I'm supposed to navigate to her place, but as I find out later, I'm on the wrong side of the street in the wrong half of the park to be following those directions. After several minutes of unsuccessful navigating, she's yelling at me about her food getting cold and accusing me of pranking her and not taking my job seriously. She asks where I am. I tell her the number of the closest mobile home, and she screams, "Well, that's a pretty long way from number 9, isn't it?" This is the first time she has mentioned she lives in home 9. "Yep, it is," I say. She uses some colorful language to describe me and Postmates in general, then hangs up. My phone notifies me that she has canceled her order, meaning I won't get full pay for that delivery. I feel like I have something to prove, so I drive among the mobile homes for a while and eventually find hers. I knock on her door. She opens it. "Is this the right place?" I ask, daring her to question my work ethic again. It is the right place. She acts all sweet like she wasn't yelling at me a few minutes ago, and she gives me a fat tip of $20. Later that night, a guy offered to tip me with substances. Story 13. This is one of my favorite random interactions from my time as a delivery driver for a Japanese restaurant. I was sent to this house with an order of a steak hibachi and a couple of sushi rolls that added up to something like $20. I like to call before I got to a place, just to give people a bit of a heads up, so by the time I got to the door, it was already open. In the doorway stood a chubby kid, about 9 or 10 years old, that reminded me a lot of the kid from Bad Santa, but without the curly hair. I tell him the total as I pass off his food. He hands me $20, and with a straight face, he smugly says, "Keep the change, pal." Immediately after, he closes the door, and I stood there for a second, trying to process what just happened. When I got back to my car, I noticed the time and realized it was way too early for that kid to be home from school. I couldn't help but laugh at the whole situation. I wasn't even mad at getting a 40-cent tip, because this kid probably faked being sick so he could stay from school and was probably in there watching TV or playing video games while eating sushi and feeling like a big shot. I know I would have at that age. Story 14. I was delivering to a couple 2 pizzas and they were arguing like crazy, throwing crap crazy. As per pandemic rules for my job, I stepped back and watched the man grab the pizza and drop a rather large wad of cash on the pizza bag. He shut the door pretty quick, and while I grabbed the bag and the cash, a plate crashed on the door with the lady screaming, "That's the kind of crap I'm talking about." Bro, I ran. Story 15. It was a Tuesday afternoon around 3:30 a.m., regular calls and orders, his regular pizza. This guy was always nice to me, but I could tell he was doing some substances because he had lost so much weight and started to get lesions on his forehead and hands as time went on. I get to his house around 4, maybe 4:15, deliver the pizza, and I'm walking back to my car when I feel an iron grip on my shoulder and someone shouts, "You gotta get out the way!" I turn and there's 4 or 5 county sheriff's deputies in full tactical gear. There was probably 20 police officers in total. They lead me behind one of their cars and tell me not to move, then bust this guy's door down and go in shouting, "Substances Task Force," and all that. I had to stay there for about an hour and had my car searched and everything. All that they found was a travel mug my mom gave me a while before I thought I had lost. Never took another delivery to that guy. I wonder about him sometimes. I never found out the actual reason behind the raid, but I have my suspicions. Story 16. Got a few good stories delivering for the hut about 10 years ago. Two of my best runs were delivering to insects. The guy was sitting on his porch in a bathrobe and had to run inside to get more cash, being very careful to block my view inside. But when his biddy came to the door, I got a good look inside. 4 chicks and 2 dudes, from what I could see, all naked with plenty of booze, substances, and paraphernalia laying around. Not much for a tip, but an interesting delivery I'll never forget. Another, I had a delivery to a mansion of a house. When I get there, nobody answers the door or answers the phone number listed. As I'm about to give up and go back to the store, 3 12-year-old kids run up saying they ordered the pizza and their parents were out of town. While the parents were away, they taught themselves how to make homemade smoke bombs, which they used to inadvertently set their backyard on fire. I grabbed their hose and started putting out the fire. They didn't want to call the fire department in fear of getting in trouble, but I made them do it. By the time the fire truck pulled up, I had taken care of the flames, and the kids emptied all 3 of their pockets into my hands for about a $40 tip. Story 17. Former delivery driver for a Chinese food restaurant. Our restaurant delivered beer. Not sure if that was even legal, and there was one lady who would frequently order 2 egg rolls and 2 6-packs of way overpriced Corona. This relatively small lady, however, had loss of mobility in her legs for whatever reason. And I guess it was most efficient for her to drag herself around her apartment, as she usually answered the door from her floor, and sometimes retreated to the kitchen to get money for payment using this method. After a while, it became clear that she had a problem, and felt morally wrong for me to continue delivering her vice straight to her front door. But she tipped well, and my bosses were not turning down her business until one day she made her usual order, and as I arrived, she didn't have the funds for her order, as I was already uncomfortable completing these deliveries for her. I told her I couldn't provide her order without payment, and she dragged herself limp legs behind her down the breezeway of her apartment complex, crying and begging me for the booze. Still haunts me sometimes. Story 18. I delivered pizza in a college town about 15 years ago. I took an order in the early afternoon to an apartment building I had never been to before. It had a locked entry and buzzer-style door, which was unusual for the area. It was usually cheap student housing, or the hallways of the apartment buildings were open-air style. It takes a few minutes, but someone finally buzzes the door and lets me in. I walk towards the apartment and see the door is open and can hear really loud music. I get to the door and I see the TV is on with full volume, and across the room is a radio, also full volume. I look to the left, and a man is walking out of the kitchen, and I see he is in a hospital gown. His hair is kind of dirty and messed up, and he seems to be completely out of it. I tell him the total, and he starts looking around for the money. Yes, the gown was tied in the back, but it did not hold against the constant bending over looking in various areas. At this point, this is already one of the weirdest things to happen to me, but then it kicks it up a notch. The college town I was in is Lawrence, Kansas, and anyone who has lived there, especially near downtown, will probably know of the peace sign guy. This dude looked like your classic Vietnam War vet. Long hair, sunglasses, leather jacket with no shirt, jeans, and big boots. He would walk around with a cigarette in his mouth, throwing up the peace sign to anyone and everyone. He was mostly harmless, but he could get upset and lash out verbally at people, although I did not know that at the time. So who should appear at the door behind me, now boxing me into the apartment between him and hospital gown man? Peace sign guy. And he is pissed! He starts yelling about the noise, and he's having to scream pretty loudly just to be heard. Hospital gown man starts yelling right back at him. He still hasn't found the money. I contemplate trying the patio door and running for it. Finally, peace sign guy leaves. Hospital gown man finds the money and proceeds to pull out a massive wad of crisp $20. He tipped pretty well too. Story 19. I got sent to KFC to pick up a DoorDash order, and the restaurant just wasn't open. No lights, no cars, nothing. I had to call the poor soul who ordered it and tell him that he wasn't getting any KFC tonight. Story 20. Well, I have something I'd like to contribute, but it's the reverse, meaning it's the strangest scenario I've had as a delivery customer. I lived alone in New Jersey with no car, but did have a fast metabolism. So I ordered from the local pizza place pretty much every other night. The owner and I loosely became friends after what was probably 100 orders, to the point where more than once he let me order and pay the next time. Delivery was usually done by someone in a beaten-up car, or at best, a few-year-old sedan. One summer night, I placed an order for delivery right before closing. About an hour later, a dark car creeps up the driveway. Despite being pitch black out, I could tell by the reflections on the paint that something was different. It was downright surreal, like a CG rendering of a fake car. This is weird. I think to myself, who can this be? The delivery is going to be here any minute, so I hope this bozo turns around and gets out of here quick. As it comes closer, I notice the design is unlike anything I've ever seen before. Eventually, it pulls all the way up, does a K-turn, and much to my surprise, parks. I can now faintly make out a logo. 2 R's stacked on top of each other. I didn't know much about cars, but I did know enough to know what 2Rs meant, along with the fact that anything made by said car manufacturer costs more than most luxury homes. Surely this is a mistake. What is this person doing in my driveway in the middle of the night? I wonder to myself, starting to grow slightly concerned. The driver's door opens and a man calmly gets out. He looked like he just stepped off the set of a James Bond movie. Now, if I didn't know much about cars, I surely knew even less about suits. But I could tell this guy's suit was worth more than my life. He suavely reaches into the car and pulls out a pizza, my pizza. He walks up the driveway and hands it to me. At this point, my mouth was opening and closing, but no words were coming out. I was like a fish out of water. I immediately started fumbling with the damp, sweaty dollars I had in my fist trying to count out a tip, and he shakes his head and says no. Then he tells me to enjoy my pizza and have a good night. At this point, I slowly nodded, not knowing what else to do. He got back in his car, quietly pulled out of the driveway, and drove off into the night. A few days later, I decided to get some exercise and walked up to the pizza place rather than getting delivery. The owner was there, and I mentioned the peculiar experience I had. He started laughing and told me, "That was my brother. He's vice president of finance for JP Morgan in New York. I forgot to give your pizza to the delivery driver before he left, and I had to clean up for at least an hour, so I couldn't deliver it myself. My brother just happened to stop by to see me on his way home, so I asked him to drop it off to you since you're one of my most regular customers." Story 21. I used to deliver for Domino's and was delivering during a night with freezing rain, so it was very slick. I get to this one house with a steep driveway with no way I could drive up. I tried multiple ways to walk up the driveway and even on the grass, but would only make it a few feet. So I call the customer and explain the issue, and they come out with a rope and I tie the pizza bag to it. So they pull it up the driveway, take the pizza, and put the cash in the bag with a nice tip. Story 22. Once I picked up an order from a Graziano's and they had no idea what Grubhub was, or that they were on the app. Had to call the horrible customer service and deal with them for like an hour before the restaurant believed it was real. Then they gave me the wrong food. Only did that for a year before I realized how completely disorganized and unprofessional of a company Grubhub is, at least in my area. Story 23. A grown man who insisted that I refer to him as Snow White. He tipped pretty good though. I'd take the money and say, "Thanks, Snow White," and get back in my car. Story 24. Pick up this Big One AM Macus order of what can only be described as stoner food. Ice creams with all the toppings at once. Every burger with lots of extra cheese. The delivery is in an area I'm not familiar with, so it doesn't strike me that there's no place to drop it until I get to the drop-off address. And there's an empty lot, a very closed-looking community center, and nothing else. I got out to see if there's anyone partying in the lot or something, but nothing. So I call the customer who not only doesn't answer, but their mobile service isn't even connected. So I waited and, being very new to this, drove back to the Macca's. I considered offering the food, most of which I can't eat, to some guys hanging out there, but decided that sketchy cold food from some random who pulled into the parking lot probably wouldn't appeal. So I just left all these bags in the parking lot. It was like $80 worth of food too. Story 25. Finished a Postmates delivery in the Hollywood Hills when I got pinged to pick up an order at the Starbucks that's just off Laurel Canyon, or in that general area, I can't remember exactly. I like delivering in this area because usually the tips were very good. The person ordering wanted 4 tall iced coffees with no ice. I shrugged that part off because rich law people are all damn weirdos. But I was annoyed because I had to place it, which means I had to make those annoying requests instead of just pick up the drinks. I go into the Starbucks and the lady working the counter says, "We've been expecting you." And I was like, okay. If you're a Postmates courier, you know that if you have to place the order, the restaurant would not be expecting you. Then she tells me that this is Ariana Grande's exact order and that I will be delivering to her house. It wasn't her name in the app, but it did occur to me that a celeb of her caliber probably use an assumed name or have an assistant order for her. I still had my doubts, just because I'm a naturally skeptical person. When I got to the address, I had to enter a key code at the gate, which wasn't unusual for this area. But when I saw the view and saw that it was basically its own compound of multiple different houses, I figured that even if it wasn't Ariana Grande's house, it had to be someone obscenely rich and famous. I pulled up to the house number specified in the app and texted that I was there, per the instructions. The person who greeted me was a middle-aged 4 feet 10 inches Latina woman with a limp. She said thanks and I left. Story 26. The app told me to pick up the food by 7:05. I drove right to the store, got the food at around 7:03, checked the app for drop-off instructions, and it said, deliver by 7 o'clock. Okay, whatever. I got to the address at around 7:20. The building I needed to deliver to wasn't there. I walked around a bit, and it was nowhere near where my map took me. I called the customer and said, "Hi, I have your food, but I've been walking around for a bit and can't find your building. Can you walk me through where it is?" They just said, "Okay," and hung up. I texted them that I can't deliver the food if I can't find their building. No response. I walked around for a bit more to find the building, and I couldn't. I called the driver support line to explain what happened. As I was dialing, I got a text from the customer, around 15 minutes after I called them, telling me where their building was. Completely different place than where the app took me. I drove there, dropped off the food, and questioned why I bothered doing this job. Story 27. The weirdest thing that happened to my friend, who works Dr. Dash, was yesterday. He delivered to a guy with a first name that sounded like Roger Roger. So he pulled up, told the guy his name sounded like a battle droid from Star Wars. The dude laughed. Then they spent like 10 minutes talking about Revenge of the Sith. Story 28. I delivered pizzas for years. There was this one house that I just dreaded going to. It was a tiny little house, and they had a tiny little dog, and the dog crap all over the floor. It was just everywhere. The woman who lived there was absolutely nuts. She shouted at the kid on the phone who took her order. She shouted at me, and I'd hand her the pizza, and she'd shout that I probably ducked it up. It'd be right, and she'd say, well, okay then. And she'd give me a $15 tip. Come to find out, I was the only one who would go there. None of the other pizza places in town would deliver to her, and none of the other people at my Hungry Howie's would deliver there. That's when I learned that my price for allowing myself to be shouted at was $15. After I had been there a year, she stopped calling. Then the house was bulldozed. Now there's a pizza place where she used to live, and it's crafty. Story 29. Delivered to a family, and they were all happy and tipped me $10. I get back to the store only to find out they demanded 2 new pizzas, a refund, and my tip back. Why do you ask? There was a chunk of Canadian bacon on their pizza, and they were Muslim. I didn't make the pizza yet. I got the biggest burn. Story 30. Already a pizza on the porch. I was delivering Cold Stone. It was a Sunday at 2 p.m. The guy opened the door. The essence of weed hit me strong. Classic rock on the radio. Guy in a plush robe. A girl dancing in the middle of the room. He said thank you. I picked up the pizza for him. He giggled, and I turned around laughing. Man was high on life, and I was jealous of him in that moment. Story 31. I delivered pizzas to a rec center for a kid's birthday. There was about 12 pizzas, and they were in the warming bags. I tried to carry all the bags at once, which led to boxes being slanted and the pizzas sliding squished into the corners. When I passed the pizzas to the guy, he opens them up and is super upset. He's like, I'm not paying for this, which is fair, but the policy was, if you don't like the pizza, you can either not pay and I take the pizzas back to the store, or I take the pizzas back to the store and then come back with new ones and you pay full price for those ones. But he was like, nah, I only have this place booked for another 20 minutes. We're eating these, but I ain't paying. So I didn't really care. But if he didn't pay, it came out of my wallet. So I called my boss, who was a very aggressive, loudmouth piece of work, and told her what was up. When the guy grabbed the phone from me, and he and my boss began screaming at each other over the phone for about 5 minutes, until he screamed, the only way you're getting this money is if I send it to you up your driver's ass. And then he covered the mic, winked at me, and whispered, I'm just kidding. And then he hung up. The bill was about $140. So he looked at me and said, I'm giving you $70 for the pizza, and I'm giving you $40 as a tip. Do not give that $40 to that idiot of a boss you have. So I went back to the store, told her he would only pay $70, and she said, oh, well, at least we got something. And I got a big tip, even though I was the one who screwed up. Story 32. I saw a woman give birth. I was delivering for a pizza place at the time, and we delivered to a large children's hospital about a mile from the store. I pulled up to where we normally delivered, the valet loop, and a blue F-150 comes flying in as I'm walking away. The driver jumps out of the truck screaming that his wife is giving birth, and out of the passenger side, I can see this process of birth. Story 33. I had food that was clearly for one person. Burger, fries, shake, drive up to a house that's very obviously a family house in a very nice neighborhood. No biggie. It was already dark on a weekend night. I walk up to door, and the room right next to door is the only one with lights on. It had those expensive wooden horizontal blinds. But you know how you can see a tiny bit through them, even when closed? I could see it was an office with wood furniture and a computer monitor on a desk, and I could see movement of some kind. Ring bell. Nothing, but still see movement. Wait, ring again. Nothing, still movement. Bang on door. Nope, still movement. At this point, I think it's the dog or cat in there or something. Bang again. Same result. Then I think maybe someone has earbuds in like a dumbass and can't hear. I text, I'm out here. No change. Voices and walk to edge of house. Often hear people use side or garage doors and are annoyed you didn't know they'd do that. Nope, neighbor. Well, what the heck, I call. Call is answered. Fumble, fumble. Breathless hello. I'm at the front door. I'll be right there. Sorry. Movement stops. Door opens and really early 20-years-old dude, clearly only in boxers trying to keep lower half behind, door grabs food and won't look me in the eye. Yeah, I think I was an unwitting audience to a little self-enjoyment at the family computer. Story 34. I worked at Domino's for a couple years and saw plenty of strange crap. I remember one time I was taking a delivery to a Section 8 apartment. I get to the door, and the lady is immediately pissed about her total and starts yelling at me. As I'm trying to explain why the total is the amount it is, I see her dog walk right behind her and take a massive crap in the floor. I decided not to say anything, hoping she'd step in the crap. Well, as I'm giving her the pizza, the dad sees the crap and starts chasing the dog away. Well, along comes a kid around 3 years old, who also has Down syndrome. He sees a big old chocolate bar on the floor, or so he thinks. As the lady is still rambling on and apologizing, this kid picks up this turd and takes a bite. With the most disgusted look on his face, he takes the bite out and hands it to his mom. She started yelling at the kid. One of the weirdest experiences I've ever had. Story 35. My cousin delivers pizza. One time she delivered to a hotel room and a naked woman answered. She asked my cousin to wait a minute, and then her dude, also naked, came to the door with money for the pizza, but offered more money if my cousin would eat out his girlfriend. She declined. Story 36. Sort of delivery. I dropped off porta potties for a while. I pulled up to some farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere. It was early morning and still dark. I knocked on the door in the unlit entryway, and a chubby little toddler answered the door, rubbing his eyes. I said, "Hey, little fella, can you get your dad?" He responded in a grown-ass man voice. "I'm a damn midget jackass. Give me the damn bill and drop off the craptors." Story 37. But I used to deliver for Pizza Hut. One hot summer afternoon, I got a delivery for a pizza and wings to what looked like a restaurant. Turns out there were small studio apartments above it, and I knock on the door anxiously. This was a particularly seedy area of town. This guy in his 50 years old answers the door butt naked and gives me a bunch of ones. I peer into his apartment as he's fishing for change, and there's someone on his bed in this trash-filled apartment in a full gimp suit and gas mask. Then I noticed the smell. It smelled strongly of piss and crap. I think he was pissing and playing with poop with whoever was in the gimp suit. I got the change and immediately left and shut it out of my memory until I saw the title of this thread. Also, one time I was doing a delivery and there was a drive-by shooting about block away around the corner as I was walking up to the door. I had a shotgun in my trunk and the mother said, "Oh, they're shooting again. Come inside quick." So I grabbed my shotgun, ran inside, and waited until long after the shot stopped before I went back to my car. She tipped me heavily for protecting her. She never told my boss about the gun, and no one got hitting in the drive, thankfully. Pizza delivery is some dark crap sometimes. Story 38. I delivered pizza in my small, rural southern town back in 2000. One of the girls I went to high school with ordered in the afternoon. She knew I was working and had to have known we only had one driver in the afternoons. When I showed up, she was in cheap lingerie, had candles lit, and was wearing some dollar store perfume. She kept trying to get me to come in, and I refused. After several minutes of failed flirting, she finally paid, and I was on my way. She seemed pissed that I turned her down. It wasn't unusual to get tipped with alcohol or hits off a bowl, but that was the trashiest experience I had. Story 39. I once had the person I was delivering to meet me in the restaurant's parking lot. This was the very early stages of pandemic, so indoor dining was banned, and it was also a very popular restaurant, so the line was long as crap. I made $13 off a really easy delivery, so I'm not complaining. Story 40. I left a note that the delivery driver could play with the goats after dropping off the delivery. They love attention and new people. The girl delivery driver was so happy, she spent probably 30 minutes out there playing with them. Ha ha. Story 41. It's not that crazy, but I recently picked up door dashing on the side for some extra cash monies. I work in a restaurant full-time, and my very first customer answered the door with 3 lit cigarettes and a cell phone on speaker in one hand, having some full-blown convo about some junk she just got, and in the other hand was the phone that I had called to tell her that her food was there. She was also like 70 years old, or appeared to be. I was pretty impressed. She was living it up for sure. She was also mad nice, and we just had a normal interaction, and I hadn't just heard her talking about some big nice junk. Story 42. A guy I worked with had a delivery where the customer said to knock on the door and say, "Food's here, get," or no tip. A couple weeks ago, I had a customer pay in change. No big deal, happens sometimes. The weird part is that all the change wasn't in a bag, an envelope. Nope, it was a vinyl glove. There was also a silver dollar in the change too. Story 43. Took an order to a nice house in a decent neighborhood, sometime after 10 p.m. or so. Front door was open, but storm door was closed. As I approach the house, I see what looks like a very nice ass, up in the air above a couch. Then I realized that there's a hand rubbing it. Walked right up on a dude getting a BJ from his wife. I knocked on the door and stepped off to the side, so I wasn't staring at them. Guy asked me how my night is going. "Not as good as yours," I replied. Dude hollers back into the house. "See, I told you he saw!" Story 44. I once delivered $650 worth of cheap sushi. There was something like 100 pieces total, to a house that could only be described as a crack house. When I arrived, there was a junked car in the driveway, and what looked like a pair of engines next to it. There was substances all over the porch and grass. but they had the correct code for the delivery, and the guy who answered the door had clean clothes on and a tie. After I left, I was pulled over about a mile away, and the cops said I had been spotted leaving a known substances house. They ran my ID, and I showed them the delivery record on my phone, and they said I was clear to go. I reported the address, and Uber said they permanently blocked that address from ordering ever again. Story 45. My very first pizza delivery, many moons ago, I was greeted by an extremely sexy woman who was working out in a black leotard. She told me to come on in and set it on the table while she got her purse. I went in and thought, crap, this is my dear penthouse moment. Then she just paid for the pizza. I left with a bit of confusion and disappointment. I had seen the movie Loverboy, after all. Again, this was my first delivery, so I didn't know it was against policy to enter the home. But I was 19 years old, and I would have quit on the spot if it were to go the penthouse route. Story 46. Finally one for me. One time last December at like midnight, I got a DoorDash from CVS. One item, a Santa hat. It said to leave it on the chair outside. Never knew the context. Here's another one. McDonald's order. I pick up a fat, heavy, uniformly squishy bag and wonder what's in it. Check the details. Over a dozen McChickens, all with extra mayonnaise. I'm like, huh. Then I see it's being delivered to a hospital. I deliver to nurses there all the time. Must be for the crew. I'm driving there wondering, wait, why would everyone want a McChicken with extra mayo? Hand it off to a guy in scrubs. He seems like an odd one. Didn't answer when I mentioned my assumption that it was for the crew. Walked back to my car gagging on the thought that he had just picked up his lunch for the next week and was going to keep it in the staff fridge. Story 47. I used to deliver for a pizza place in a college town, so I've got a few amusing stories, though nothing all that interesting. I'll share a few of the more memorable ones. Delivered to a house that had a sign on the front that said, "Doorbell broken, yell ding dong instead," so of course I did. I heard some laughter from inside and a confused, "What the heck?" A young woman opened the door with a confused look on her face, and I just pointed and said, "Sign said yell ding dong." Apparently, no one had ever actually done it, and they forgot it was there. One time, delivered to the bouncer, Dr. Mann, at an outdoor frat party. The guy appeared to be in his early 20s, a bit over 6 feet tall, and absolutely jacked, like he seemed broader than he was tall. When he opened the box to check the food, he looked like he was about to weep with joy, and he said something along the lines of, "This is the most beautiful thing I've seen in night, and there are some fine-ass women in there. Pizza apparently makes gym bros wax poetic." One time, I rolled up to a house and could smell the substances they were smoking as soon as I parked. This particular house was at least 30 feet back, but the smell was so strong it carried all the way to the street. I knocked on the door, and after a couple moments of hearing somebody fumbling inside, a window opened and a guy started talking to me through it. Long story short, these guys were so stoned they couldn't figure out the door. Eventually, I just had to deliver through the window because at least 3 guys were stumped by the door. The guy at the window apologized and said it wasn't their house, as if a lack of familiarity and not an extreme excess of substances were the explanation. I'm glad the restaurant didn't substances test after that one. Finally, the craziest of all the crap I saw happened just a couple months into the job. I pulled up behind a residence building that wasn't quite a dorm, but also wasn't quite a frat house. It was some sort of residence exclusive to an honor society of some kind. Regardless, it had an alley to one side that led to a small parking lot in the back. I pull up, call the dude who asked if I'm in the back. I confirm that I am, and dude says something like, "Okay, great." A moment later, he walks out the back of the building wearing nothing but a ball cap. He's covering his junk with one hand and holding a 20 in the other. I was so shocked that I just used the bag to break line of sight to his lower half, and otherwise continued the transaction like normal. After I handed him his food, I went to leave, but before I could, he said to a thankfully clothed friend, "Hey Joe," can't remember the actual name, "get a picture of us." "Hey, are those your parents?" Turned to see a car pulling away, and Joe says, "Nah, that's just my mom." So Mr. Ballcap ducks out of sight, giving me the perfect opportunity to flee. However, I'm such a state of confusion from the whole situation that I just stand there dumbfounded. After a moment, Joe's mom is pulled out of view. The nudist comes out of hiding, puts an arm around my shoulder, the 20 holding side, thankfully, and Joe snaps a photo. A sensible person would have turned away, or covered their face, or objected. Anything, really. Instead, I held my delivery bag in front of my chest like a shield, looked at the camera, and half smiled, half grimaced as the picture was taken. Then I went back to work. Finally, as a follow-up to that event, about a month later, I delivered to a building across the street from the honors residence. The frat from the other story, come to think of it. And the guy I'm delivering to says, "Hey, did you deliver to a naked guy the other day?" "I thought so, that was me," to which I replied, "Okay, I'm glad you found your clothes." Never saw that guy again. Story 48. I once had a delivery for 10 bacon cheeseburgers, but literally just as I parked in front of the address skip, the dishes called me and said the order had been canceled. However, the guy at the delivery address was sitting on his porch and saw me, and he just goes, "Skip the dishes." So I say, "Yeah, but they let me know the order's canceled." He says, Yeah, you're the fifth delivery I've had, but this is the first time it's been canceled. Turns out he had gotten into a disagreement with a woman down the block, and her way of getting back at him was by setting up a fake account for him and just delivery bombing him with ridiculous food orders. This was pre-pandemic when choosing cash payment was still allowed, so she didn't have to pay anything up front to do this. Skip the Dishes must have been in the process of blocking the account just as I pulled up. Anyway, he and I laugh at how petty the whole thing is, and then I accept my next order and start heading to the next restaurant. Except I am now in possession of 10 bacon cheeseburgers. Good burgers, too. If you've ever had a burger from Five Guys and Fries, they were very similar to that. Anyway, I eat one, but obviously I can't eat 10 burgers. So for the rest of my shift, I got to be a hero by giving the gift of burger. Each time I would go to a restaurant to pick up my order, I would give the restaurant worker a free meal. I also counter-offered burger to a homeless person that came up to my car to ask for money. He seemed surprised, but he accepted. Eventually, once I was onto my last delivery at Montana's, I still had 2 burgers left. So I gave them to a server working there, and she just kind of melted. Like she was seriously so touched, it was adorable. She was like, "Really? You're just going to give me free bacon cheeseburgers? Thank you so much." I think she must have been due for meal break or something, because it was so sincere. More than one restaurant worker insisted on giving me something in return, so I ended up with a stash of drinks in my car by the end. Story 49. I delivered 20 minutes outside of town once, very unlike my usual deliveries, somewhere I can only think of as, oh, I'm absolutely going to get beating here. I had to drive down a 2-mile gravel driveway that had a single house on it next to a river. I made the delivery with no trouble, and the GPS said the gravel road was supposed to continue on and loop back around to the main one. But about halfway there, the middle of the road was fenced off with a rusty bar gates they use for cattle. I turned my car around and noped the duck out of there. The dreary weather and heavy fog contribute to the vibe, I'm sure, but wow. There was also a guy standing by the road as I was driving up, and being a woman in a remote location, plus the ambiance of the place, the fog and the sun going down, I was scared, crapless LeMayo. Dude went inside before I pulled up, but he had just been standing by the tree across the road. It was just an overall creepy situation. I've never driven anywhere that remote before or since. It was like last week. Story 50. I deliver for Dr. Dash. I had an order recently where they asked me to knock specifically 6 times. Maybe not as weird as the others here, but was just odd enough to remember. Story 51. I knocked on the door. A man holding a large knife answered. He gives me a harsh, "What do you want?" Me. Delivery for Larry. The guy turns around to look at another man behind him. That guy says, "Oh yeah, Larry. Yeah, we'll make sure he gets it." I hand the man with the knife the food and walk away. Pretty sure Larry was passed away, but he also didn't tip so. Story 52. As a customer, the weirdest thing that has happened is when I ordered some Wendy's last week. I put in the instructions to leave it at the door and text me. So I'm playing on my computer and I noticed the light from the door opening. Guy just opened my door and started shouting, "Anyone home?" I was pretty pissed because he didn't attempt to call or text me or even knock before just opening it. I guided him out of it because I would have been pissed if my cat got out in just outrage in general and he looked confused and insulted like it was a normal thing and I was being in a hole. Altogether weird encounter, and I lock my door when I order DoorDash now. Story 53. One time I was delivering food to a guy's house who was having a birthday party for his kid. He made me wait outside their house for like 15 minutes because I got there too early and he refused to open the door. I got complained at and no tip. Story 54. Oh, I was dating a Uber Eats driver, so his story, not mine. He went to drop off an order and the door was open. He knocked, asked if anyone was home. No one answered. He left the food at the door and left. He got a message a few minutes later asking if he could go back and take the food inside. So he drove back and set it on the kitchen table and left. He got another text asking him to take the food into the bedroom because the person who ordered was feeling unwell. So he went back to take the food into the bedroom, and there was a naked girl on the bed with her ass hanging out. He set the food by the bed and left. He got a final text asking if he took a picture as an extra tip. Very creepy, I thought. Maybe it was for some kind of prank, YouTube video, or to frame him for beating. Story 55. Went to the 711 to pick up snacks that had been ordered, and the front windows were shattered. Broken glass was all over the parking lot, and police were there asking the owners questions. I assumed there had been a robbery or a drive-by shooting, so I canceled the order like a coward and went back to work. Story 56. Not me, but my poor DoorDasher. I ordered Dr. Dash one Saturday afternoon when my power went off. My power box is outside, so I ran quickly to the side of the house and left my 3-year-old inside. He was completely naked just after a bathtub, so I figured it would be fine. Unfortunately, my DoorDasher came at the same time. I came back around to the front of the house to see a man talking to my naked 3-year-old telling him to go inside because it was cold and rainy. My son was coming to get me. Toddlers don't care about nakedness. I was so embarrassed and incredibly grateful our Dasher was a good guy. I added an addition $15 tip after thanking him and apologizing profusely. Story 57. I delivered Plan B last night at like 2 a.m. I think it is awesome that it is so readily available. I got the order to go to Walgreens and I was able to just grab it off the shelf. When I was 16 years old, almost 10 years ago, and found myself needing it, the older male pharmacist at CVS would not sell it to me, but luckily another one, a younger woman, waved me over and secretly bought it for me. It was a whole thing and so stressful to teen me. Now people can DoorDash it. Amazing. Story 58. I couldn't decide, so have my top 3. Delivered to a house well within the 30-minute guarantee. Guy opened the door, maybe 17 years old, looked at me as if I'd beating his dog, snatched the food off me, nearly causing me to drop it, then slammed the door in my face. Also had a lassie answer the door, with just a long t-shirt on, looking very flushed. She kept trying to pull the t-shirt down, and I realized she wasn't wearing any trousers. At that point, I figured I'd probably interrupted something. Personal favorite was a customer. Answered the door soaking wet in swimming trunks, as if he had just been showering. Took me a minute to process what was going on, but he didn't seem no notice or care. Just took his order, which he dripped all over, and said thanks. Story 59. I used to make deliveries last year to make a little extra money. So one day, I got an order to deliver to this house. The instructions said, when you arrive, bang on the door very loud or I won't be able to hear you. So I walk up to the door and I proceed to knock on the door. The order is contactless delivery, so I set it down on the doorstep and start to walk to my car. All of the sudden, I hear the front door open and some guy comes charging out of his house straight towards me. He grabs my shirt and starts yelling at me, telling me never to knock on his door like ha again. I was taken aback, but I told him the notes he put said to knock loud. He doesn't even acknowledge what I just said and just continues to say that if I knock on his door again, he'll kick my ass. I pulled myself away and told him not to worry, because no one will be back to deliver to him again, and I got in my car and left. Once I got back, I reported him, and as far as I know, he was put on the do not deliver list. Story 60. Worked for Uber Eats. Picked up the order and pedaled to the delivery address. Once I get there, I ring the doorbell and no one answers. Proceed to send message and waiting. 2 minutes later, a very distressed woman comes out screaming at someone inside the house. Damn you and that mother ducker, and left in her car. The person at the door, who was only in his undies, proceeds to slam the door. I let 30 seconds pass and ring the doorbell again. No one answered, sent another message, and I was ignored. After 10 minutes, I contacted support, and they told me that if they didn't answer in 5 minutes, I was free to leave with the food. Waited the 5 minutes, texted support to let them know, and drove back home. My then girlfriend and I had a feast. We Googled the cost of the meal, and it was close to around 1,500 Mexican pesos, which is a damn lot for 2 persons. We were in a very rough place economically then. That was the best meal we had had in months. Story 61. Rainy, cold, miserable night, perfect for delivered food. I bring 3 orders out, and the first one I get to, I call, and no one answers, so I go to the door and start knocking. A handicapped autistic young man in pajamas answers the door and steps out in the rain to get the food. Before I give it to him, I have to collect the money, but before I do, the door closes behind him, locking him outside with me. Now he starts to cry because the door is closed. He's locked out and doesn't have the money on him. His mom was sleeping in the bedroom with her door closed and Junior wanted a snack. Now I feel like crap because I have to leave and keep delivering, but I can't leave the food because he hasn't paid and he's stuck out in the rain in his jammy jams. So I make the decision to call the shop and gave my credit card to pay for his order and decided that he could ride with me on the next 2 deliveries, eat his food until I had a chance to figure out what to do. By the time we finished and got back to his house, I helped him bang on the door until his mom, who was also handicapped, made it to the door and let him back in. First thing he said was, "Mom, I delivered pizza." I felt so relieved I didn't bother collecting his bill. But I can tell you this, anytime Jack wants to go on a delivery, I'll be happy to take him. Story 62. So for a while I worked at Qdoba and had a delivery catering order. Super hungover from hanging with my buddies the night before, I showed up late for an early morning delivery. I was an undergrad at the time and almost exclusively worked nights because of my school schedule. But they were in a pinch for this one, so I agreed. End up getting there and forgot some stuff, so I had to rush back to the restaurant to grab it. When I got back, I apologized profusely. Could tell it was some corporate event, and I inquired as to their business as I set stuff up. "Oh, we're Ekka's company. We do construction management." Happened to be that my cousin had been one of their foremen and had recently been laid off. "Oh, X! Y'all must know Paul X." "Yeah. How do you know him? He's my cousin." That was an awkward tip to take as they avoided eye contact. Still kind of surprised I got a tip. Story 63. I do delivery for Instacart multiple times when someone has come to the door so I could check their ID for orders with alcohol in it. They've come half-dressed. One time, it was a lady with huge boobs who was just wearing leggings. Sports bra combo. Story 64. Delivery guy goes all the way outside of town to an area that looks like a trailer park stretched out over valleys and hills. Goes half a mile down a dirt road in the dark, down a long gravel driveway between pastures, and knocks on the door to deliver food. The door is answered by two extremely scared and confused-looking little girls who do not have money handy. Eventually, after a long wait, the kids come back to the door with some crumbled bills and no tip. Guy leaves looking kind of pissed off. I was one of the little girls, not the delivery guy. Me and my sister thought maybe our parents had ordered food for themselves to eat when they got home from the bar and would be angry with us if we didn't pay for it. So we gave that delivery guy our combined saved-up allowance out of our piggy banks. Our parents eventually came home and laughed at us for being so stupid. The receipt on the box said the guy was supposed to deliver to Cave Road, which was near our Cove Road. Story 65? I'm a delivery employee, but I do own a BBQ grill restaurant that employs 3 delivery guys. Especially one of them is doing this job for over a decade and he could tell you some stories. I'm going to share 3 of their stories. Note that these 3 addresses are flagged in our system. 2 of them are regulars now. 1. The order is for 4 kilograms of BBQ pork, around €60. The address is barely in our delivery zone, but in an underdeveloped area. Google Maps has it as an empty lot. If it wasn't already paid by credit card, we may not have delivered. Anyway, our driver gets there and surprise, it's an empty lot. He calls the guy and he tells him to come to the back of the next building. He goes and finds the guy. The dude has rigged a projector on the back lot of an empty building and he and his friends are watching soccer. 2. The town we live in has a lot of tourists. That means a lot of Airbnbs, timeshares, and the lot. An order came in for a place is kind of a gated community, 6 small villas, used mainly by tourists. It is stated to give them a call when the driver arrives. He does, and the woman on the phone tells him she will be there shortly. She arrives a few minutes later, lightly dressed. It was the middle of the summer, so it was acceptable. She takes her order and proceeds to inform him and us that it's a nudist resort. She was the owner. And for future orders, she would appreciate it if the driver knew beforehand. So he would be buzzed in next time. She's a good tipper. 3. We sell beer at the restaurant. Our prices are higher than getting it from the supermarket. So getting a small order of food and a dozen beers is kind of weird. Booze costed more than the food. The driver arrives and a kid opens the door, around 13 years old. The driver asks for an adult. It's illegal to sell alcohol to minors. And the kid said he placed the order. The driver says he can't give him the order due to alcohol. The kid goes all, "Come on, man, it's just beer. My dad is coming," and all that. The driver says no and leaves. It was a cash delivery. Apparently, that address is flagged by other restaurants in town because the kid tries to bypass the law by ordering takeouts. Note, 1 and 2 are repeating customers. 3 is banned. Story 66. I went to deliver to a shady motel across town. As I'm walking up to the door, I catch a super strong whiff of pot. I knock on the door, and a dude hiding his lower half behind the door answers, and I see a chick in panties and holding an unattached bra to her chest. Weird enough already. Well then, their dog, big black lab, just bolts out of the motel room, and they're both naked, so they ask me to go get their dog. Luckily, he didn't get far, and he was sweet as could be, but probably the weirdest experience I've had so far. Story 67. Not really with a customer, but during a Super Bowl, someone ordered an insane amount of hot wings. I could barely drive my car with the windows down because my eyes were watering from the inescapable hot sauce. Must have been 5 pounds of wings. Story 68. I delivered pizza in Pittsburgh. Most people don't know this, but Pittsburgh is the hilliest city in the country, or that's what we were always told. It also gets ice storms. It's either a bad, totaled boss car once, or good money combination for a pizza delivery driver, as an ice storm is a great excuse to stay in and order pizza. One frozen evening, I'm attempting to go up a flight of ice-covered stairs with a pizza. The front light came on when I got out of the car with the pie, so I know they know I'm here, and I expect them to open the door when I heroically make it to the top of the stairs, but I don't. On the very last stair before the front door, I slip. I reach out both arms to catch myself and somehow fling the pizza and the box it comes in way into the air. It's flying end over end. I have this vivid memory of a street lamp illuminating the pizza box as it slowly tumbles through the night, as snow falls all around it. Majestic. Reality snaps in. I scramble to my feet and miraculously catch the pizza at the exact moment that the front door opens. I'm standing there with a dumb look on my face, staring at this recently returned from the great Beyond Pizza in my hands. And the lady who answered the door says, "Well, how much do I owe you?" All I could do was stammer out the total. She gives me cash, whisks the amazing gymnastic pizza from my arms, and closes the door. I totally expected them to call the shop and complain that the pizza was messed up, but they never did. It makes me wonder if centrifugal force kept the pizza pushed towards the bottom of the box so it wasn't damaged. It's possible. Story 69. Driving for Skip, heading to a nice area. See the house that I'm heading to. Standing outside leaning against an electrical box in a yard is a shirtless dude. This guy was jacked. huge. If I looked like that, I would hang out with my shirt off too. Has a pack of smokes and a beer sitting on the electrical box. Anyway, since he looked like he was waiting for something and was outside the house I was going to, I figured he was waiting for me. As I pull up, I nod at him and he nods back. Perfect. Easy drop-off, right? But then he picks up his beer and walks off in the other direction. Weird. Okay, whatever. I head to the house and knock on the door. Deliver the food to the person inside, and then get back in my car. I start fiddling with my phone to get the next address, and see some movement out of the corner of my eye. Before I can do anything, jacked shirtless guy opens my passenger door and climbs in beside me. Oh crap, I'm being robbed or something. I look at him. He looks at me. He sees the skip bag in the back and clues in. I figure it out at the same time. He was waiting for his guy to make a drop, and since I nodded at him, he thought that was me. I managed to stammer out no man, sorry. No, okay, he responds, and then exits my car and walks away. I guess earlier, when he walked off after I nodded, he went to grab his cash to make the buy. Scared the crap out of me. I make sure my doors are locked now. Story 70. Dropping off a Walgreens order, and the people had a free roaming coyote as a pet, had a tag and everything. Or the building we delivered to that had no entrance, there was no door. Was so confused. A security guard took it from us and we asked him where the door was, and he said there wasn't one. To this day, we still aren't sure what that building is used for. Has something to do with money? Story 71. Had a guy excitedly invite me into his house, into his backyard, because he wanted to show me his high-tech tree house he had finished. And he just tipped me $10 and I was dead inside, so I said, damn it, and went in and didn't get abused and saw his cool tree house. And yeah, it was neat. Story 72. I used to deliver for Domino's about 5 years ago. I had a pickup truck follow me into a neighborhood subdivision. I didn't think anything of it at first as they just rolled in after me. I stopped to look for the house I was looking for. The truck also stopped. Then I realized the house I was looking for was at the back of the neighborhood in the end of a cul-de-sac. I reached the house and parked my vehicle on the left side of the cul-de-sac. The truck parked on the right side opposite of me. I didn't think much of it still, but made a mental note. After I made my delivery, I got in my vehicle and counted my tip. While still sitting in my vehicle, the truck drove 2 loops around the circle cul-de-sac, passing me both times. The second time it passed me, there was a child, maybe around 8 years old, pressing his face against the cab window facing my truck with a pretty creepy little smile. Kind of freaked me out, so I decided to leave immediately after. The truck pulled up behind me and began following me. At this point, I put the pedal to the metal and sped out of that subdivision as fast as my vehicle would safely let me. I reached the entrance, exit of the neighborhood, and made a left out and sped down the main road back towards Domino's. I was at least 10 minutes away still. As I looked in the rearview mirror to see if the truck was still tailing me at the end of the subdivision, I then saw flashes of light and heard whizzing sounds coming towards me, trucking hitting the asphalt around me. I crap you not. This crazy git was shooting at my truck with a child in his car. Needless to say, I drove a lot faster all the way back. Story 73. Oh man, finally one for me. I worked as a pizza delivery guy for a small restaurant in my hometown in the summers during college. Just a regular night. We stayed open later than anywhere else in town, so it was probably around midnight. I had one last delivery. I arrive at this house and get out of my car, and there's this big old black dog barking at me from the yard. I've seen my fair share of dogs barking while delivering pizzas, but this one was mean. Then I see a lady just standing in the doorway. I say hi, expecting her to call off her dog or something. Nothing. Total silence. I ask her to call her dog inside, and she finally does. I proceed to walk up to her and get her to sign the delivery slip. The lady is visible off balance. Possible drunk. I like to make small talk while I'm there getting the pizza out of the bag, etc. So I comment on her beautiful plants she has in her house. She says, if you like that, you gotta see these. She leads me a few feet into the house and opens up a door. I look in and I see long dark stairs leading towards a basement. I say, nope, I'm not doing that. No way, and straight up run to my car. I drive away from there as fast as I can. The house is at the end of a street, so I have to turn around. And when I do, I see her in her doorway watching my car as I drive by. I get back to the shop and tell the guys the story, and they laugh it off saying she was trying to duck me or show me a pot grow she had in the basement, but I could feel that energy, and it wasn't good. Every time I got a delivery to that neighborhood, I freaked out thinking I was going to have to go to that house again. Still think about it. Story 74. Drove for about a year. At the end of a long shift, I was hungry and tired and ready to be home. I had one more order to go. It was for sushi, my favorite food. I walk into the restaurant and am tantalized by the smells. Wait there for half an hour, too long, then make my way to the customer. I make it to the apartment complex, but their directions don't make any sense. I finally find their door, but nobody answers. They have their phone number written in the notes, but it's different than the one they have on their account. I call one, and it's a deadline. I call the other, and somebody picks up, but it's a person in another state, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. I call the delivery company and they say to wait there while they try to get in contact with the customer. I explain how this is impossible with the phone numbers listed, but they don't listen. It's already 45 minutes past my shift end at this point. The company calls me back in a few minutes and says to wait 15 more minutes while they try to reach the customer. I wait. The company calls me a third time and says to wait 30 more minutes. And at that point, if nobody claims the food, I can cancel the order. As soon as I hung up, I put my car in reverse and drove home. It was the most delicious sushi I've ever tasted. Story 75. I had a unique request for a single Coke, small, from McDonald's. I knew it was a unique order as the McDonald's I was sent to was on the other side of town. Kid you not, I passed 2 or 3 McDonald's with drive-through windows on this pickup. And I even picked up at one of the restaurants that week, so I felt something was off. When I arrived, it was all smiles and they handed me the Coke. I asked if there was another order associated with this customer. Gave me a funny look and said, no, fine. I'm driving back across town and thinking this is going to go into complaint mode as it's a 25+ minute drive after the drive to get the soda. Then I'm concerned the ice will have melted and condensation will be too heavy. Yada. Well, I arrive, standard house. Nothing too special, well kept. And then I noticed the porch was too perfect. Almost like a stage for better homes and gardens. I got a little uneasy. Rang doorbell. No answer. Reviewed instructions and read, please do not leave at door. Okay, ring again. Door flies open. I know I was being watched. Lady in her late 50 to early 60 smiles and takes the drink. That's it. No, nothing else. Okay. So I'm thinking she waited almost an hour for a watered-down Coke, paid $15 or so for the delivery, and then I get a $10 tip through the app a minute later. What the heck? What I could not wrap my head around was the fact that all fountain drinks are $1, small, medium, large. She ordered a small drink. I shared this with riders when they asked about weird experiences. We all agreed it was odd. One day, a young girl responded to my experience with, maybe she was the boss. Whoa, that insight put my mind at rest on this one. Then again, maybe it was one of those goofy experiences. Story 76. I do Instacart. A couple weeks ago, I had a guy with the same name as me tell me that the rapture will be here soon and to prepare to leave the earth. He gave me $20 bill and then added a $77.77 tip to my order. It was terrifyingly amazing. Story 77. Not exactly the same thing, and the stories aren't strange, but I did Meals on Wheels for a while. One difference is that you go to the same house at the same time every week. I have a few memories that stand out. First was an older woman who lives in a small rundown house in a bad neighborhood. She had an iron security door and a tiny dog that would run through the bars and the door outside if you weren't careful. The woman wasn't very mobile, so I would have to go chase this dog around to get it back if it did get out. A few weeks I noticed that her house smelled very strongly of urine, so I made a note of it and told the social worker. Turns out she was incontinent, had run out of diapers, and either couldn't afford or simply couldn't leave the house to get more. Mo dropped off a few more. Next was an older man who invited me in and would just talk and talk and talk for like 15 minutes without me getting a word in. He was just lonely and liked having someone around. Last was just a house where the adult son or someone would answer the door, grab the bag, and shut the door immediately. They had a pit bull tied up in the yard all day with a super heavy chain. One day, this dog dug underneath the fence and barely made it out to the other side, but was still attached to the chain and stuck in a kind of awkward position. Tried to help, but that dog was super mean and tried to bite me. Called the social worker again. Son got really defensive about it, and I never saw the dog again. Story 78. I'm a DoorDash driver, and I'll never forget my weirdest drop-off experience. It was a couple pizzas from Little Caesars, and it was in a location I'd never been before. I get there, and it is this sketchy-ass rundown apartment building. It was dark outside, and I was a single woman, so I was already on edge. The apartment I had to go to was in the basement of this building. Oh, great. So I get down there, and I knock on the door, and I hear music from inside, death metal music. This guy opens the door, and I can see into the dimly lit apartment. And seated on the ground is 6 people all sitting cross applesauce in a circle. And they all turned to look at me when he opened the door. No one had eyebrows. None of them. Not even the guy that opened the door. Needless to say, I swiftly gave him the pizzas and speed walked back to my car. I don't know what was going on in there, but I was not about to be part of it. Story 79. I do Postmates in Sacramento on the weekends for extra money. Super Bowl Sunday I was working and I got an offer from McDonald's to a not so great part of town. I go to pick it up and it's a large drink. That's it. Red flag. I get there, and the building looks as though it's abandoned, but the customer's note says to knock twice on the black metal door. It's a black metal door, so I'm like, damn, I found it. As I knock on the door, some dude rounds the corner and runs to my car and pulls the door open. I've heard of this happening before, where they'll order something super cheap and have it delivered somewhere out of the way or in poorly lit areas. See, what they didn't plan on is that I bring my German Shepherd with me when I do Postmates and keep her in the back seat, just for that reason. I always make sure to put the customer's order in the warming bag outside the car before I get in the car and don't take it out until I'm at their door. That way I don't have to worry about dog hair or anything. He changed his mind real quick about taking my car. I also didn't work much for about a month after that. Story 80. About 10 years ago, I was a driver for a certain red-shirted asshats chain. On one of my shifts, I get an order for one of our regulars I'd never delivered to yet. Part of his order is a cinnamon bread thing with frosting. He orders it with extra frosting. So I make up the order, and after I add extra frosting, my best friend that also worked there saw the food and was like, "No, dude. When that dude says extra, he means absolutely bury that thing in frosting." So I drive to the address and the guy invites me in and has a quick conversation. And I mentioned that a coworker straight up saved me because I didn't realize how much frosting he wanted. Mind you, this guy is probably a solid 350. No judgment, just an observation. He's also probably the nicest man on earth. Anyway, he says, "Oh yeah, the missus likes it that way." I'm thinking he's referring to his wife. Nope. The man opens the box, puts it on the floor, and exclaims, "Here's your food fats." I'm like, "Oh no, I want out of here before the missus comes out." Instead, the until now unnoticed absolute unit of a cat appears and demolishes this thing. This cat was an easy 50 pounds, by far the fattest cat I have, or probably will ever see. Totally caught me off guard. The guy tipped me like $20, and I was on my way. Story 81. Uber Eats here. I got a call from the dude who placed the order as I was at the door. Said leave it door. He said it was actually for his grandma, and she was paranoid, so instead of leave it door, dial the code I'm about to give you. Approach slowly. Put the food on the handle. Knock 3 times all while staying on the phone with him. Story 82. I work for Uber Eats on top of my part-time job. About 2 months ago, I was dropping off a Chick-fil-A order to a house not too far away from where I live. It was a pretty standard meet-at-door delivery. As soon as I pull up to the house, I hear my customer yelling, "Nala, no!" This giant pit bull, who I can only assume was Nala, comes barreling towards me as I'm taking the food out of the delivery bag in the backseat of my car. I thought the dog was just coming to say hello to me, and I like dogs, so I didn't really mind. My own dog is excitable too. But no, this giant dog leaps into the backseat of my car, looking around, jumping, doing all sorts of dog stuff. The customer and I spent the next few minutes coaxing the dog out of my backseat. He apologized profusely and increased the tip and app. I wasn't mad about it. It's my favorite delivery story to tell by far. Story 83. I deliver for Uber Eats, and last week I was delivering some wings to a dude. Simple delivery, leave at door, no contact. I complete the delivery, and a couple minutes later, my phone rings, and I could tell it was coming from the customer through Uber. I thought something was wrong with the food. No, he called to thank me for delivering his food. Cool, no problem, dude. Then my phone rings again, same number, and I ignored it, so he calls again, ignore. Dude calls again, so I finally answer, and he asked if he could have my number for future orders, and I told him I didn't think that would be appropriate and ended the call. I did a couple more deliveries after his, and when I finally got home, I get on Facebook, and this dude tracked me down and sent me a friend request. Damn creepy. Deny, block, reported to Uber. Story 84. I was in a large country restaurant one time picking up a pizza for someone. I go to the bathroom to make a dookie. Nobody was in the bathroom at all. And all of a sudden, I hear from outside the stall a bunch of dudes going, "Whoa. Hey, whoa there, buddy. It's fine, man, do your thing." I exit my stall to find a naked man standing at the urinal. He wasn't even peeing. He was just standing there all confused and crap while turning his entire body around to look at people walking by. I went to the front desk and told the employee, "Hey, I don't know how to tell you this, but there's a naked man in the men's bathroom." She's like, "A naked man?" "Yes, a naked man," I reply back. She runs in the back to inform her manager. About 5 minutes later, I hear her telling her coworkers about the fabled naked man. I peeked around to ask if her manager went and checked it out, and the manager said there was nobody in the bathroom at all. It keeps me up at night. Why was the naked man there? What was his purpose? Did he even know why he was there? We may never know. Story 85. I had a delivery order from Subway that wanted only 3 water bottles. This immediately sends up red flags to me because I had another incident before this that involved a weird ex repeatedly sending water to his former girlfriend because she had a restraining order against him. In this situation, I thought it was weird because where this person lived was in walking distance of various places that could sell him water without a delivery fee. It was also in a sketchier part of town, and he picked probably one of the furthest restaurants in the city from his house. I ended up trusting my gut and released the order. I later mentioned it to friends, and they actually knew who the person was because they had worked with him. They told me he ended leaving that job because he had been accused of harassing and ended up getting an ankle monitor because of similar issues, although I don't exactly know what they were. Explains why he ordered water instead of walking to get it, but I'm still glad I didn't go. Story 86. 12:02 a.m. order comes through for 4 large chocolate chip frappe from McDonald's. Extra chocolate chips, extra syrup, extra whipped cream takes forever. They only gave me 3, had to get those 3 remade, plus the 4th. Pull up, it's now 12:57 a.m. It's a big-ass house. White girl, clearly very drunk, in bathrobe, opens door. She screams with delight. and her friends show up behind her. 4 very drunk girls in robes. Tip me an extra $20, plus the $20 on the original order. They didn't leave the house. That or the time I pulled up to a house in Detroit, and there was a legit street fight going on. I dropped. The food bailed, called cops. Story 87. I once had a woman curse at me, call me a lying mother ducker, and slam her door in my face because there weren't napkins in her meal bag. I delivered to her apartment. Story 88. I have one on the opposite end of the spectrum. It was about a year after I moved into my current house, and I decided to give it a small renovation, mostly repainting everything. I hired professionals to do most of the work except my bedroom, which I wanted to do myself with stencils and crap because I thought it would be cool. The color pattern I chose included painting every wall a shade of light blue with stenciled patterns on 3 walls, and the floor in a darker shade of blue. This I did myself. Like the biggest genius ever, I painted the floor first, which I realized meant I wouldn't be able to leave the room unless I was a long jumper. Worse, my food delivery guy was just outside calling me. I explained the situation and guided him to my window. I gave him a key. He opened the door and came to my room. Since he couldn't throw the food, we improvised by putting the food in a basket, hanging it on a long broom handle and passing it over the paint to me. Then he locked my door on the way out, gave me the key again through the window, and left. Bless that guy. Story 89. I do shipped. It is like a less popular Instacart that is owned by Target. I had someone place a 10-item order that said, do not sub any items. Just skip them if they are out. I go and they are out of every single item that this person ordered. I had to get in contact with the company to get them to remove me from this order and cancel it altogether. I honestly think it was from another shopper who was using it to jam up other people and waste their time opening up other orders for them to fill. Story 90. A few years ago, I was working for Dr. Dash. I got an order for 27 slices of bacon from Waffle House. I thought it was a mistake, so I text the customer, and they was like, yeah, man, that's what I want. Get the order and drive to their place. I knocked on the door. When he opens the door, smoke comes pouring out of the house. So much smoke, I thought the Undertaker was there. There stood a man that was high as a kite. He goes, man, I'm so glad you're here. I'm starving. I was like, oh, I noticed. I gave him the food and started walking away and hear him yelling, you're a hero, man. Story 91. Chuck E. Cheese had their crafty pizza available for food delivery under the name Pasquale's Pizza and Wings. So, 1. Most people were low-key tricked into ordering Chuck E. Cheese pizza too. It was funny, so I happily took the opportunity to slyly and causally let it slip to the customer that it was Chuck E. Cheese pizza. And 3. Chuck E. Cheese had the arcade shut down for COVID and was only open for pizza pickup, but it didn't stop them for keeping the animatronics running without music. Story 92. A few years ago, when Uber Eats was picking up in my area, I wasn't making enough to even pay my gas because no tips from any orders. One of the last nights I worked, I was delivering food to a house in a quiet, newly built neighborhood. I pull up to the door and ring, and out walks what looks like a 9-year-old. I asked her if her mom or dad could take the food, and she said she lived alone. To this day, I don't know what to think. This was a small child telling me she lived by herself. To me, a complete stranger. I'm used to people telling me things or talking to me without knowing me. I don't know why I've been told I give off a welcoming vibe, I guess. But I think she was telling the truth. I looked behind her in the doorway. There was no furniture in the downstairs, no cars in the driveway. To this day, I wonder what the heck her living situation was for her to be alone in such a nice house in a new house. On top of that, she spoke to me in the same way an adult would, and she even tipped me in cash, something no one else had done that night. Story 93. My roommate and I both drive for UE, but he's been doing it for way longer and has some interesting stories. He had an order for some Chinese food, so he went to the restaurant to pick up the order. The restaurant had forgotten to give him one of the items, so he had to return after he had already left the place. This slowed him down a lot, so he called the customer to inform them of his late arrival. On the phone, the customer starts talking about some woman saying things like, yeah, that idiot passed away. He's been long gone. I beating him and I'd do it 100 times over. He was able to discern that this dude wasn't just some kid trying to play a prank, as the guy continued to go on and on about this. Eventually, he hung up and called U Support. They told him not to deliver the food and that they would get in contact with the authorizers about this before banning his customer account. Sketchy stuff. Story 94. I delivered a pizza to a sketchy house. The guy who answered looked like a typical Alan, more style weirdo. He asked if I liked cats. I said yes. He pulled out a baby Bengal cat that literally had 8 toes per paw. Its feet were so big with toes that it kind of looked like lynx feet. Also, one time I got hit by a car right outside the house I was delivering to. My customer first dumbass still knocked on their door. SCD, crying my eyes out, apologizing that their pizza got crushed as I fell down the hill. The lady said, the pizza is not my concern right now. And I was like, I learned a very valuable lesson. You can care too much about customer service. Story 95. I'm an Uber driver. And this one time I was doing my last delivery. And this dude was riding my ass as I was turning into this neighborhood. He follows me in and over, takes me in this small road, and slams on his brakes, stopping me. So I lay on the horn, and then he gets out like aggressively walking to my car, and I shoot it in reverse like 15 feet and stop and stick my head out the window and said something like, "Yo, hey, are we good?" He stops and looks at me for a second and said something like, "I thought it were someone else." Gets back in his car and leaves. That was actually scary as duck because I love watching First 48 and stuff like that. And I'm telling you, this dude looked like he was riding an adrenaline high. I've done like 1,800 deliveries and have definitely had a lot of weird ass crap happen. Dealing with the public is really weird sometimes. Also, to everyone who leaves directions to your apartment building from the street in the delivery notes, I honestly love you. Story 96. I have a question for the DoorDash drivers here. Why do I never get my drinks when I use Dad? I have ordered a drink around 8 times and never got it a single time. Is it the driver's or restaurant's fault? I have given up on ordering them now. Story 97. This was when I delivered Domino's directly for the company. I was 18 at the time. Knocked on the door. A beautiful woman opens up straight out of the shower in a robe. Hand her pizza, and she said, "Let me go get your tip." A robe appeared to slip and turns around and goes back inside. At the same time, she did that, the door closed behind her. I stood there for a solid 5 minutes, and she never returned. Then realizing that the tip was supposed to be seeing her naked. I was shy, and as the robe was slipping off, I immediately turned my head as my mother raised me to respect ladies. I could have used the $3, though. Story 98. One time I went to a really nice house full of screaming, laughing kids, probably 10 years old. It seemed like a birthday party, except there were no decorations. A kid answered the door, but he had gelled hair and was wearing a button sweater. When I asked for his parents, he just got a few kids to take the food while he busted out a wallet. He tipped me really well, smiled, then shut the door in my face. Story 99. Not mine, but my wife's while she was running favors. Someone asked for a box of extra-large condoms, but Walmart was closing, so she had to go to a shady gas station while the person was getting, understandingly, impatient. Gas station only had large, so she had to call the customer to ask if they would fit. When she got to the hotel room door 45 minutes later, a giant hand reached through and grabbed the condoms. Story 100? This one isn't strange, just funny. The order said to go to house 21. Upon arrival, no one was home, so I checked the phone number. It wasn't a complete number. After calling back work a couple of times, I finally get the real number. The conversation roughly went, "Hey, I'm at the delivery guy. No one seems to be home." We're out the front. You sure you're at house 21? Yes, I'm at house 21. I then start walking down the street asking for landmarks. Then I hear, "Oh, I see you." A boy about 11 years comes up to me and takes the pizza. He mentions his family just moved in. He was living at house 18. Story 101. Delivering for Pizza Hut in a crafty part of town. I arrive to a rundown house late at night. It's dark. Nobody answers the door. I'm walking back to my car and several cars pull up. Large group of Hispanic dudes get out. One of them walks up to me and starts ducking with me. "What's that pizza, man? What you got, huh? What you doing in this neighborhood hood?" I'm about to piss myself. He starts laughing and slaps $60 in my hand for a $20 order and tells me to get out there. Best tip I got working at that location. Quit soon after. Story 102. I finally have something for one of these. I did Postmates back in like 2016, and one of the orders was for a pair of high-top white Vans. I rolled up to the house, and the guy invited me in for a beer, which I was thinking I should probably say no to in order to seem professional. The guy insists I come in for a beer until I cave. It turns out that he was the head of product for Postmates. I ended up hanging out there for a while and chatting about working on the app, tech, the company, and all kinds of stuff. Very wild to feel like you're getting punked. Story 103. Nothing especially weird doing Dr. Dash. But I truly love when people send their kids to answer the door. This one person ordered like 10 specialty cupcakes from a nearby French bakery and left a $10 tip. When I got to the door and rang the bell, I heard a ton of little footsteps running toward me. When the door opened, 5 kids, all under the age of like 10, were behind it, and they looked absolutely delighted, and the youngest one kept saying, "Cupcakes, cupcakes," all super excited. The one who looked like the oldest boy gave me a hug and thanked me for the cupcakes. After I'd handed the order off and waved goodbye to the kids, I honestly felt super warm and fuzzy. There's just something to the pure, innocent, unadulterated joy of children that makes you put some of the adult bees aside in your head. Story 104. I'm not a delivery person, but once when I ordered Dr. Dash, my driver was almost to the restaurant when a traffic accident happened a little way in front of him. Traffic wasn't moving at all. He called me to let me know what was going on and that he might be a little late. 30 minutes later, he was still stuck right there where he was. He wound up releasing the order to be delivered by someone else. I felt so bad for him because this was taking up all his time and he wasn't even going to get paid. The order arrived over an hour late and the food was completely cold. Burger and French fries. Cold fries are no bueno. I didn't complain though because it was an extenuating circumstance that was no one's fault. Story 105. I don't know if this counts or not, but I went and picked up a lot of food from this Italian restaurant. Like, a lot of food. It filled my passenger seat. Anyway, I get to the address and it's a huge gated house. I ring the doorbell and it's clear there's some kind of party going on or something. And the homeowner answers the door and helps me get the food from my car because I couldn't carry it all, and we just made small talk. I told him I was studying at a nearby university and what I was hoping to do with my degree. Blah, blah, blah. The whole time I'm thinking, this guy looks super familiar. As I'm driving home, I get a notification that I got a really good tip and it hit me. I just delivered food to Brad Paisley, who helped me get the food out of my car and listened to me talk about my dreams and aspirations. Story 106. I was pulling up to an apartment building that had houses next to it. There was an older guy in the car in front of me that looked like he was struggling to stand up, but seemed like he was just an older fellow who couldn't stand up super fast. I'm getting the food and everything and start walking across the street and up the stairs. I look over and I realize this isn't an old man with bad knees. This is a drunk dude and his pants are down. All the way down, junk in hand. I yelled, "Oh man," and turned around and ran up the stairs. I'm kind of shaky because like, what the heck? I drop off the food and peek down and some dude ran out of one of the houses and up to the guy and got him situated and inside the house. It was like 1 p.m. on a Tuesday. Kind of traumatized, I finished the delivery and went offline for a bit. Story 107. I delivered pizza for a while. The one that comes to mind was kind of out in the sticks. I walk up to knock on the door and the patio door is open. In the sunroom is a man in his 60s with no clothes on, down on all fours. I don't know what was going on, but he had his phone propped up and a large jar of Vaseline on the floor next to him. He apologized and jumped up. Spent several minutes getting his pants on and way too long looking for the money to pay with, muttering about how he hid his wallet so that escort wouldn't rob him. Never did come up with the money, but I left the pizza and noped out anyway. Story 108. This is kind of sad and strange. I work for a pizza place as a delivery driver. I got a delivery for an address I knew was a beverage drive-thru. I was kind of confused because it was late and they'd be closed by now. I thought maybe the employees wanted some pizza while they closed up the place. I got there and they're definitely closed, but I don't see anyone inside. I call the number on the order and a guy answers and says he's around the side of the building. I kind of get sketched out because I don't want to get mugged or anything. I go around the building anyways and the only person around is a homeless dude with his belongings around him and a blanket covering him. I walk up to him and asked if he ordered delivery and it ended up being for him. He was really nice and wished me a good night. I still think about him and hope he's okay. Story 109. I did the worst one. Here's the best one. I pick up an order one night, pull up at a nursing home, get lost a bunch of times trying to find the right room. Finally, I get there. It's a young guy, quadruple amputee, sleeping. I leave the food. The next time I come back, he's awake watching TV. He seems pretty upbeat and we chat a little. The final time I see him, he's up walking around, laughing and joking with his roommate. He has prosthetic legs and hooks. He's truly happy and full of life. I hope he's still doing great and I'll never forget that guy. Felt like I was an unsuspecting witness to a miracle. Story 110. I had to go to the 83rd floor of the Sears Tower in downtown Chicago. Usually you have to pay to go up there, but since I work for DoorDash, I got a free pass. It was awesome. Story 111. Not a delivery driver, but an eater. I ordered some Wingstop, and after about an hour, I started to wonder where my food was. Checked DoorDash and noticed my order had been marked as delivered even though it never arrived. Filed a review saying it wasn't delivered, and instantly got a call from the driver. "Hey man, I just gave you the food, and I even took a picture of it. Why did you mark it as not delivered?" Turns out, the driver had another Wingstop delivery at the exact same time, with the exact same food, to a customer with the exact same name. The other Figglypuff ended up with both of our orders. Story 112. I worked at a pizzeria making deliveries, and one night someone ordered 10 boxes of pizza. So I go to the house, and there's one car in the driveway. I ring the doorbell. Someone answers, and sure as crap, the entire house was being hotboxed. This dude was higher than the car Elon Musk shot into space. So it's just him and his wife in the house, and the total was about $205, and this man hands me $300. As I'm getting ready to give him change, he goes, "Man, I'm too high to do math right now. Here, take a slice for the road," and then proceeded to hand me 4 slices of pizza. Story 113. Dr. Dash. Someone ordered McDonald's items off their regular menu in the morning when they only had breakfast items. I called to let them know, and they were pretty upset. I'm pretty sure a similar thing happened in an Adam Sandler movie. Story 114. My first delivery as a Domino's employee, the door is wide open with a closed screen door. I look inside and ring the doorbell. The view is of an empty living room. It's silent ding-dong and up stands. From the center of the living room is a naked man. Completely taken aback that I arrived as early as I did, apparently. He covers himself and runs off to the side, and I hear, "Mom, the pizza guy is here." Thus begins an incredibly award exchange between the naked man's eye mom and the pizza. That job peaked pretty early. Story 115. When I drove for the hut, I delivered to an escort a few times. Same motel, different rooms. They ordered a sub, and we forgot the dressing packet, so I went back since it was slow. The John answered the door, gave me $20, and said, "You just made my day, so now I'll make yours." I'm 1,000% sure that dressing was on his junk at some point that night. Story 116. I briefly delivered food to elderly people for Meals on Wheels, and I never expected tips, but there were a few people that did. But I'll never forget the first time I delivered to this one elderly Vietnamese man who handed me a can of pinto beans as a tip. I said thank you and left, and had a good laugh about it. But every time I delivered to this guy going forward, he always tipped a can of pinto beans. It's like his son owned a pinto bean canning factory or something. I ate every can I was tipped, by the way.